Okay, here's the material portion of the video. This is everything you're going to need to get it going. I've double checked this. I think I've got everything here, and what I'm going to do is take you step by step through everything. First of all, once you've decided the airplane you're going to do, go ahead and contact Cali Graphics. This is who does my decals. She does a phenomenal job. Make sure you send her some good pictures of the airplane you're choosing to do. She knows the scale of the airplane, and she knows how to get the decals to the right dimensions. So go ahead and pause it if you have to copy that down. I use her for almost all my planes now, and she does a great job. So there's your decal secret of the day. Alright, other materials you're going to need: pencil, one with a dull tip. What I use that for, you'll see when it comes to the portion where I do the blue nose, I actually draw this line, freehand it, kind of get it in line with this panel here. That's how the blue nosers work. If you're doing a blue noser paint job, this is how it's going to go. Some of the other paint jobs you might have to do something a little different. Like I said, I don't use any masking up here on the blue nose. The only plane I did any masking on, once again, is up there for the D-Day stripes, and I go over that a little later too. So the pencil is used for that. The big Sharpie marker was used just to draw on the, this is where the gun camera is on the wing root, and also the fuel overflow port. And the fine tip Sharpie marker was used to do gear doors, just kind of draw them out a little bit. And also, get this set back down, the gauges. I painted the gauges on with white, flat white paint and a detail brush, got them in the correct order and placement that they would be, and then drew all the dials and stuff in with the fine tip Sharpie marker, as well as that gun sight too. For the screwdrivers, 3 different ones, and there's a reason for that. For the 2 different Phillips here that you see, I've actually discovered that these 2 bolts, these 2 screws here for the exhaust stacks, a couple of my Mustangs have different ones. For some reason the heads are slightly different. I had to use a smaller one on some of them and the bigger one on the others. You can also use that bigger one to get the wing off the plane if you need to. The flathead here is a very fine tip one. What I use that for is the most recent replacement spinners are pretty snug. And to carefully get this off, you just kind of, I can't really show you here, just kind of pinch it till you get a gap there, and then slip that little flathead in there and pop it off. That'll safely remove it. Get you a good hobby knife and a normal razor blade. This is going to come in handy for cutting out the modifications in the cockpit, as well as the getting the decals off. 10mm box end or open end wrench to get the prop nut off. I'll get to the propellers here in a minute. Detail brush, this little one here, that was mainly used to put the oil streak on and do the gun blasts. I actually use flat black for those because the gun blasts are usually a little bit darker, and so that's what I use the detail brush for, and also to paint the guns themselves black. I'm trying to think what else I might have used the detail brush on. That was pretty much it, I think. My main brush, my favorite brush, this medium one here, what I like about it is it's got a nice wide enough area to do a large area, but it also has a nice little bit of a tip to it here. And that's what I actually use to do the canopy framework, even on the B model on the birdcage. I just use that brush. It covers a nice little area and does a fine job. The big brush, the nice thing about Z foam is it does hide brush strokes if you do it right. I actually painted the rudder with the big brush, as well as some of the top up here. I airbrushed most of it, but there's some areas I used the brush on. I use that medium brush once again to do the line, follow where I had drawn with the pencil. Now for the plastic portions of the plane and some of the larger areas on the plane, I used an airbrush. You're going to use an airbrush of your choice, and there's various different models. I use an Aztec. Oh, the detail brush again, or maybe it was the medium brush I used to do the fuel caps, and that was freehand painted very carefully. Didn't have a decal for it. So those are those materials. Paints, I primarily use Tamiya, however you want to pronounce it, acrylic paints. They're easier to clean. You can just use 91% isopropyl alcohol, or you can use warm water. Works good in the airbrush too. You can just pour it straight in. So there's the flat black, XF1, flat white, XF2. Paint you're going to use the most of, I recommend you get about 3 bottles. Try and get the big ones like the black one there. If you can, you're going to go through at least 2, if not 3. Same with the blue. Even with the small one, you can get by with probably 2 of them, but I get 3 just to have some backup. Every now and then you got to touch up the cowling from landings. Flat red, that was used for the fuel caps. Now if you're doing a 328th Fighter Squadron plane, the D models, when they got to those, they painted the rudders. And for instance, the 487th used yellow. I'm sorry, 486th. 487th they went blue. 328th had red. Now on the B models, they didn't paint the rudders, but what they did do for the flight leads was painted the trim tabs. For the flight leaders, Punchy's plane didn't have it. West by God Virginian. Because the rudders are fabric on a real P-51, to kind of offset the silver, the aluminum appearance, what I use is this Model Masters aluminum enamel. And what I did for that was that kind of offset some of the paneling for the gun bays. What else did I do up here on the tail fin, and a couple panels up here in the front as well. But I also used it on the rudders on the B models. Okay, and we'll get back to that other one there. The yellow, like I said, was for the rudder. It's also for the prop tips. The olive green I used as a substitute for the green zinc. Interesting point to note is European theater aircraft, the inside of them where they were painted and primered were usually zinc green. The Mediterranean theater and Pacific theater, you'll see a lot of them were yellow. Some of the Pacific ones are green, but most of the Mediterranean ones in particular were yellow. So if you ever see real pictures and notice the gear bay wells are on some are yellow and some are green, that's why. I don't know why they did it that way, but I used that. I did paint the inside inside of the cowling, so when you see in there it looks a little more realistic. But up here, particularly around the edges of the cockpit, got the green in there. I chose the black for the majority of the cockpit to give some depth to the airplane, because it used to be green and I found it just made it look really shallow in there. So I went with the black to give it some depth. There's your paint thinner for your enamel. This titanium buffing metalizer for airbrush only. We actually use the detail brush and the medium brush, and that's what I used to do the oil streak and the exhaust blast. And on the other 2 Mustangs, it's what I used to do the gun streaks too. So those are the paints. The glues for the canopy, I use this UHU styrofoam glue, and this is also heavily used on doing the B model. Get yourself some CA, thin CA or medium CA, some kicker. Like I said, the isopropyl alcohol is good for cleaning your acrylic paints. Another thing I found during the making of this video, now I didn't use it for this, but I did find that it is safe to use on the foam. So if you feel you want to completely remove the paint from your airplane, you can soak down a rag with this stuff. Don't apply it directly to the foam. I didn't do that, so I'm not sure how that would work. But if you just put it on a rag and wipe over the airplane, it'll take the paint off and it won't hurt the foam. But I will tell you, it's very time consuming and extremely messy, so I did not do that process. Now, I mentioned up here on the cockpit, because of the greenhouse effect in the canopy, alligator the foam really bad in this one. What I did to smooth all this out is just use some lightweight spackling. It's Fast and Final lightweight. It's I believe this is an 8-ounce little canister. Mix it with some water, and what I do is I bring it to a whipped cream or a marshmallow fluff kind of consistency, and then just spread it over the foam like putting peanut butter on toast, basically. Let it dry, and then hit it with some 220 sandpaper or 200 grit, whatever it is, to kind of smooth it out a bit. Worry about the fine finishing after you do this. You're going to take a little bowl, mix you up some Minwax polyacrylic water base clear satin sealer with a whole bunch of baby powder. And what I do is I mix that up until it gets to about a pancake batter consistency, nice and thick. Brush it over the spackling, let that dry, hit it again with 200, 220 sandpaper, and then 400 and 600 to really smooth it out and get a nice glass finish. Now once you've done all that, your decal's removed, make sure you've removed all your control rods, get all those disconnected and removed from the airplane so you don't end up with dry paint and binding. Hit the whole airplane with primer. And I just use this Rust-Oleum automotive primer. You can pick it up at Walmart or any automotive store. 2081 light gray primer. I've done, I think, 4 or 5 airplanes with that one can. This is the paint issue. When I described earlier, we debunked the paint myth. Like I said, this plane has 4 layers of paint on it. It has the original gunfighter paint, the first Heller bus paint job, then primer, and now this paint job. Does not affect the speed of the airplane at all. There's not a weight issue with it. It's still just as fast as it was from day one. But you just don't want to spray your paint on real heavy. Just get a good coat. Make sure you cover what you need to cover. You don't have to saturate the thing down and do 20 layers of just one color. So that's how we handle the paint job. And now onto the prop. Like I said, I go with a 30 amp ESC and a T28 prop, and I run either a 2200 25C or 2250 30C battery in my plane. It's plenty fast. And so there's the T28 prop. Now you're going to notice this little APC prop. Why is that here? Well, one reason I have it is I got a nice pusher prop F15 up here that uses a 6x4. The other reason too is this little prop ring. This is your little magic adapter. A lot of guys are putting all kinds of different adapters on, and as a result they have to modify their spinner, they have to use a different spinner. There's no need to do that if you're putting a T28 prop on. You're probably sitting there going, well, why should I have to go buy a prop just to get this ring? Well, now you got yourself a paint stir stick or something to mix up your epoxy with, so get creative with it. This thin ring that comes with it slides very nicely right over that prop shaft all the way down. And the T28 prop fits snugly over that, so you're not going to have any wobble, won't cause any vibrations or anything. It's just that simple. So that's the major mod I did to it. Okay, now we'll pause it here and get on to the rest of the stuff. Oh, I missed something. There's the little antenna, this little craft pick. It's the right shape for a P-51 radio antenna. I cut it right about there and just slide it into place, glue it in, paint it. Good to go. Okay, I think we've covered everything.